today we're actually, if we wanted to prove that this podcast is for everybody, this is the episode that proves that. Actually, really the next 4 episodes are going to be kind of proof that we are, there's something here for everybody. So we need you to listen.
That's right.
So get your listening ears on. Be ready. Hey, I'm Rusty.
And I'm Heather.
And we're the Bryants, and this is the Redeemed Marriage Podcast.
We are here to encourage healthy marriages, strengthen wounded marriages, and begin the process of restoration to broken marriages.
We aren't licensed counselors, but we are a redeemed couple that loves the Lord and wants to help you journey through this messy, challenging, and fun part of life called marriage. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant. We are back with our second episode of the new year, 2022, and we've got some really exciting things planned for the new year, and we're excited to be kicking things off with Season 3, which we actually kicked off last week, and sort of just talked a little bit just about who our audience is and who we are speaking to. And we kind of shared last week that really this episode or this podcast is for all marriages.
That's right.
And even those that are not married yet. Obviously, we speak into marriages that are struggling because we have some great insight on that because of our marriage crisis from 10 years ago. And then also just other things that we learned of how to be healthy in a marriage. And so today we're actually, if we wanted to prove that this podcast is for everybody, this is the episode that proves that. Actually, really the next 4 episodes are going to be kind of proof that we are, there's something here for everybody. So we need you to listen.
That's right.
So get your listening ears on. Be ready. All right, so it's the start of the new year, and so what we wanted to do for the next few weeks is to give some very, very practical, healthy habits for a growing marriage. Yeah. So if your marriage will adopt some of these things that we're going to share over the next 4 weeks, then, we can't guarantee anything. Nobody can really guarantee anything, but we can almost guarantee that your marriage will grow and be healthy in 2022 if you do these things.
That's right.
So we want you to listen, take notes if you can, be ready to put some things into practice. We're going to actually challenge you, and we're going to follow up with those challenges ourselves because we're doing those challenges right along with you. All right?
I'm excited.
Okay, so it's the first of the year, so everybody starts thinking a little bit about New Year's resolutions and starting to think of how can I improve in my life and all that. Well, we're going to show you how you can improve your marriage in 2022. Now, several years ago, I was listening to a podcast of some sort. I actually think it was Dave Ramsey. I always like to throw in Dave Ramsey just to get a good, funny look from you. And then, you haven't allowed me just to have an actual episode where I only talk about Dave Ramsey.
I'll make you a deal. If you can get Dave Ramsey to be on our podcast, I'll let you talk about Dave Ramsey for a whole episode.
We're tight, but we're not that tight. Yet.
He doesn't know you exist. Come on.
Hey, we have listeners in Tennessee, and it could be him.
It could be him or his daughter.
You just never know. You never know. Anyway, hey, if you're listening, Dave, let me tell you this. I picked this up from you a few years ago, but it was basically he encouraged you to do an inventory of 7 areas of your life every year. So it was spiritual, career, financial, social, physical, family, and intellectual. So several years ago, I took those 7 things, and I'm kind of a nerd like this, where I made goals in every one of those areas, 3 goals for each area. So it was 21 goals for the year. That's
nuts. That's too many.
What? I mean, what if I was a better person that year? I mean, if you knew which year it was, and you were like, man, that dude was awesome that year, then you'd be like, everybody should have 21 goals.
21 goals.
It's too much. Don't do it. So, so then I actually heard another one that kind of scaled it back to 5, and there's a couple of those that you can kind of combine, and so I've scaled it back. And then there's been some years where I've just been like, forget this. I'm not doing all these goals and stuff or New Year's resolutions. Like, I'll just improve as I go. What do you do? Do you do?
Yeah, I mean,
goals. I know we talk about this sometimes, but I asked you a question not because I don't know, but so that you could actually start talking a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I do goals, and I discuss them with my mentor and with you, and I have my goals are set based on what Bible studies I want to do during the year, how many books I want to read during the year, the Bible reading plan, of course, that I choose for that year, scripture memory. I just kind of write down things. But one thing that she has challenged me to do is do a check-in after 6 months, not to wait until December and go, well, I didn't meet all those goals, but to kind of do a check-in at 6 months and decide, do I need to, revamp those goals, look at them again, change them, that type thing. So it's not just, so many people fail after a couple of weeks, especially when it comes to exercise or eating right or things like that. And then they, just kind of give up. So it just kind of keeps you a little bit more accountable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have goals. It's not necessarily my New Year's resolution is to be this, but just some different ways to challenge myself.
I think it can be a little bit intimidating for people because they don't, they either have done them before and they look back on it and they go, well, that didn't work. I gave that up after 2 weeks. And, it's a little bit intimidating. Plus, it's kind of hard. It's like, do you go through 7 areas of your life and set a goal or 2 goals or 3 goals for each of those areas, or how do I make it? So what I have learned is how to kind of simplify it a little bit. And several years ago, I actually took a verse from the Bible, Luke 2:52, where it says Jesus grew. I mean, I'm thinking if Jesus grew in these areas,
that's right,
then these are the areas that I should grow in. And it says Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, and favor with man. So I've taken the last probably 4 or 5 years, I've taken those areas of my life, and I've tried to come up with some ways that I can grow in those areas. So those 4 areas. Basically, it's intellectual, so wisdom, and then physical, so physical goals, and then your spiritual life, favor with God, and then relational, favor with man. So here's what we're going to do for the next 4 weeks. We are fixing to give you we're going to turn all 4 of those areas, and we're going to land them right back into marriage.
That's right.
So how can you grow in those 4 areas in your marriage during 2022? And we're just going to take it in order. So the first one that it said was Jesus grew in wisdom. So today what we want to do is we want to give you 3 very practical ways that you can grow in your wisdom in marriage. So basically learning. Like we should all be learning. Like learning how to have a better marriage. So what are 3 ways that this year you can start doing these 3 things to learn and grow in your marriage, because you're going to learn how to be have a healthy marriage.
And these are things that we can do individually, but then also we can do with our spouse. Say, I'd like to do these things with you. So like as we talk about these things, I think it's important for people to realize, even if you don't have a spouse that's on board, it's things that you can do. But if you do have a spouse that's on board, do them together. Like a lot of these things we can do together. So
I love that. I didn't know that was where you were fixing to go with it when you started talking, but I immediately thought, yes, that's exactly what we were talking about last week, how all of these things that we are, they apply to everybody. And even if you're not married yet, like you can already be learning.
That's right.
what it means to be in a covenant relationship, in
Sure.
a marriage relationship. So we're going to tell these 3 things that you can do, and each one of them sort of is a little bit more challenging than the other one. So there's 3 things. We'll go in order, and each one's going to push your limits just a little bit further than the other one. So the first one, congratulations, because you're already doing it.
Yes, they're listening to
Okay, so the goal is not just to listen to our podcast. But the goal is, if you're writing this down, you're taking notes, the first one is listen. So what are the things that you can listen to, that you can put in through your ears and into your mind that will allow you to learn about marriage in 2022 and learn how to grow in your marriage in 2022. So for me, podcasts are like, I love podcasts, and I know that you wouldn't be listening to this if you weren't interested in learning from podcasts. But it is so, what a great tool, because podcasts and things that you listen to and put into your ears that then go into your mind and that you can soak in and take little pieces of information, you can do that when you're going for a walk, when you're going for a run, when you're in the car. I mean, good grief, how many of us are in the car a lot during the day? When you're folding clothes, all that. So what are some things, Heather, that you would suggest that people could listen to? You don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
What's your favorite podcast?
Ours. Are you kidding? I do listen to ours, because when we talk, when we're sitting here talking, I don't remember everything we say. And then sometimes I go back and listen to it and I'm like,
we are some smart people.
Actually, it's just a perfect picture of Jesus speaking through us.
Yeah.
Because half the time I'm like, yeah, that didn't come from my
Well, and you probably go back and you go, man, if we would do all the stuff that we said. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay, well, let me go podcast first.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so let me go podcast, and then I'm gonna throw it over to you and let you hit other things. So, honestly, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to other podcasts because I'm always wanting to learn. It does help us with our show, helps me to pick up things that other marriage ministries are doing. But I mean, I would love to I'm looking at my library right now and some of the things that I listen to. Probably the top three marriage podcasts that people listen to, I listen to them. So one is called Extraordinary Marriage. One is called Fierce Marriage. And one is called The Naked Marriage. And that's the XO ministry. So just to throw those 3 out. And then The Noble Marriage is a YouTube series that I like to listen to. So I'm just tossing some of these out just so people can get some other ideas. There's a newer one that's Restored to More. I listen to quite a few, and there's more that I could give, but those are just some of the top ones. But beyond podcasts, there's also some pretty incredible pastors that preach on marriage quite often.
Yep.
So yeah, you may want to throw, or if you've got something else that you're thinking of as far as things to listen to.
Yeah. No, I typically do listen to more sermons than I do podcasts. I listen to Matt Chandler at the Village Church every week. His sermon. I listen to Craig Groeschel, and Craig Groeschel does a lot on marriage and relationships and stuff. But I listen to him. Of course, I listen to our pastor at Pine Lake Church, Chip Henderson, and then I love to listen to Louis Giglio at Passion as well. Those are just some of the ones that I listen to, that I try to listen to every week, and I do that while I'm walking or folding clothes or things like that. And I mean, let's be honest, I don't get to all 4 of those every single week, but I try to listen to those on a regular basis. And then, as far as listening, I listen to, and I know this may not even be where you were going, but I listen to a lot of worship music. I just think it's important what we put in our ears and what we put in our hearts and in our heads, because that's what's going to come out of our mouths, to our family and to our spouses. And so that's, I know that's probably not as far as learning,
right.
But I just think it's important to, put words to the fact that what we put in our heads matters.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And, we gave some specific resources and things you could listen to, podcasts. You can go and you can search for marriage podcasts. Another one that I listen to sometimes that's really good is called Stronger Marriages. And again, you can, if you want to ask us specifically about some of these things, we're happy to share these resources. We want you to know we are not the only marriage resource out there.
We're not.
But the sermons that you were mentioning, there's some really good pastors that, they specifically, like you mentioned, they preach on marriage a lot. Ted Cunningham.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can Google Ted Cunningham and marriage, and you're going to get some really, really good marriage sermons, and they are hilarious.
Yeah,
the
he's
dude
so funny.
can communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But even with, our favorites like Louis Giglio, Stephen Furtick, and Craig Rochelle and Matt Chandler, like Chip Henderson, you can go to those and you can actually search for marriage sermons, and they'll have series that are really, really good. So we want to encourage you to do that. And again, if you have specific questions, you want to ask us about that, we're more than happy to provide some more resources. Anything else on the listening side of things that you can think of? I guess another thing that would be a little bit of a listening would be to listen to other marriages, like mentors. Whether that's just calling somebody that you respect and saying, hey, can you meet with us or visit with us, or a Zoom call or whatever it is.
Sure.
I know we've had some friends out in Arizona that have recently asked us about jumping on a Zoom call with them. And so, those kind of things are very important, just to listen and learn. We're talking about learning, so we want to learn from other people, and listening is a good way to do that. Second thing, let's move on. Second thing beyond listening is reading. You like to read.
I do like to read, but I'm really guilty of my reading being fictional. Like, I kind of like to, you like to read to help you learn. I like to read to kind of escape.
Go to sleep.
Exactly. I love a good fiction story. And that's probably because I'm a second grade teacher and I love children's books. And just, I teach my children to learn to read, because, you can go anywhere when you read in your mind. And so I tend to read fiction more than I read self-help books, but that's actually one of my goals this year.
Well, I
do better.
I have tried the last several years to have one fiction book going on at the same time as a nonfiction
That's
book.
because you're smarter than me. You can do both at one time.
Well, the fiction book, really, honestly, it is to fall asleep. I like to lay in the bed at night and I'll read a chapter, and that's about all I can do, and then I go to sleep.
Yep.
But there are so many marriage resources out there now. And there are, we've said this a million times before talking about this, but when we walked through infidelity 10 years ago, I was searching everywhere for anything that I could get my hands on. And, it's well documented that I said that I read from August to January, from 2011, August to January of 2012. I read over 30 books that were marriage-related books. And we still have all those books, and we've picked some of them up and read them multiple times. We shared those on social media recently. But now, there weren't just tons and tons. Some of those books, it was kind of a stretch to say that it was a marriage book.
Yeah.
But, now, you can find some really, really good marriage resources. And so I usually read a couple, 2 or 3 a year, but we sort of today actually challenged ourselves. And so this is the challenge that we want to throw out to all of our listeners. We want to challenge you to start reading marriage-specific books, something that will help you with your marriage. And so what our challenge to each other was, we want to read collectively 12 books. So I'm going to read.
There's somebody that just turned it off. They're like $12.
No. Because, well, you don't have to do. Hey, look, because here's what I'm actually going to. Okay, that's the big thing. And that's probably scary. 12 books, and people are like, I hadn't read 12 books since I finished high school. And I didn't even read 12 books in high school, is what some people are thinking. But 12 books, we're actually going to go. You're going to read 6, and I'm going to read 6. And they're going to be different, and basically 12 books we've never read before on marriage. And it does give us a little bit of wiggle room, because if you read something that's like really, really good and you say you should read this, then I'll read it.
That's right.
But here's my easy challenge. I want to challenge everyone that's listening to find some book on marriage, and between now and Valentine's Day, that's a month. You think people can read a book in a month, right? Your eyes are really big.
Just because I know that they can, especially if it's a commitment. I think back to when we had itty bitties.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I just don't want people to feel like a failure if they don't do
Right.
it. So it's a goal.
Right, and we're just telling you what our goal is.
That's
We're
right.
just saying read something.
Yes.
And I would even say, even if your goal is to read one marriage book in 2022.
Yeah, great goal.
Do it.
Crush it.
Yes. Yes.
That's right.
So, I mean, we have other reasons for reading as well, because it gives us more content to be able to share more with. I mean, we said it last week. We were like, look, we've done a lot of the work for y'all, so listen to us and we'll tell you the things that
That's
we're
right.
learning.
So
We're the Cliff Notes
That's
version
right.
of
Last
what.
week we told them, you don't have to read. We'll do this for you.
And now we're
like,
saying, read,
12
read.
books.
Oh, man. No, I just think that the goal is to always be learning, and you should listen, and that's an easy one, because anybody can start listening to podcasts, and they can pick it up and turn it off. And
Let's be honest. Let's think about the times that you pick up your phone, and even waiting in doctor's offices, or where you pick up your phone to look at social media, or you pick up your phone to play a game. Just, when you have nothing to do for 10 minutes, you can
read
instead.
That's such a great point, because we're all sitting here going, I don't have time to read a book, but I bet your screen pops up and tells you how many hours you were on your phone last week, and you're like, my gosh, I could have read a book last week.
Oh, and they have audiobooks.
That's right.
They have audiobooks. My friend Meredith loves her an audiobook.
Figure out what works for you, but the challenge is to start reading. And if you need some suggestions, we can. I mean, we got a stack of 30-something books that we can share, but a lot that we've read along the way. And then we haven't picked our 12 books that we're going to do. So when we start picking those and we start reading them, we'll share with you that's what we're reading.
And I love to give them stars.
We'll be nice. If any of those people are listening to us that wrote those books, we'll be nice to you. Okay, so listen, read, and the last one.
What's the last one? I can't remember.
You can't remember? It's to do, to do something. So basically, listen, read, and do. Go. I don't know.
Somewhere.
We just we were trying to think of something creative that you could write down. But basically, what we're saying is find a marriage retreat or some sort of marriage conference and sign up and go together. And if you're in a position or a place, we actually have people in other countries that are listening to us. So if you can't go, COVID has you locked down still in your area or whatever, there are virtual conferences that you can attend, and that's just something that could be really easy for somebody to do. We can give some examples of that, but anything by Focus on the Family, you can look up some stuff to go to through Focus on the Family. XO Marriage is a good one. That's Dave and Ashley Willis and some other people that are a part of that network, and they have some great conferences. There's lots of the Stronger Marriage team. They travel to churches and do things. So there's lots of different resources out there, and we'd love to point you in the right direction if you need help with that. But again, we're stretching a little bit further, because some people are like, oh, I don't have time to do that, or my spouse would never go. And that may be the case. And if it is, then find that virtual conference where you can hear a good speaker and somebody that can really challenge you.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of places doing things until Valentine's Day too. A lot of people do things right around Valentine's Day that you could do, but people may be listening to this after Valentine's Day, so there's still plenty of things out there. And if you can't go, if you are like my spouse would never go to that, go out on a date.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just make a date of just you and your spouse and talk about these things that we've been talking about this week on, guys, let's make our marriage stronger. What can we do to make our marriage stronger? So if you don't think your wife will go to, or husband will go to a conference of some kind right now, go on a date. Just talk about these things.
You know, you just made a really good point, because we just shared 3 things. All of this is about growing intellectually in your marriage. So learning how to strengthen your marriage in 2022. And we threw out listening to things like podcasts and sermons or mentors. We talked about reading books and finding resources that will strengthen your marriage, and then going and doing something. Beyond that, there's one thing that you could do to learn about marriage, just what you said, go on a date, but ask your spouse. Like, if you want to know how to have a better marriage, like, seriously, ask your spouse, what can I do to make our marriage better? I mean, that's learning, because you're learning from the one that you're actually walking with and journeying with.
Yep.
So if you have to go, I mean, we can't go on a marriage retreat, go on a date and sit down and say, tell me 3 things that you
like the number 3, don't you?
It's easy. You know,
Not too much. Not too.
Well, I went to seminary, and it was always, hey, 3 points and a poem. I don't have a poem for y'all today. That would be a great way to end this podcast, would be with a poem.
We could make one up.
I don't know, because I might get funny, and then it would be crude. And we probably don't need that right now. We're talking about Luke 2:52.
That's right. Focus.
Yes, but Jesus grew in wisdom, and that's what we want to share with you today. It is something for all couples, or even those that aren't even married yet. Like, let's learn how to grow in our marriage. So, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Nope. I thought of a book when you said even people who are not married. That Ben Stewart book.
Yeah.
Dating
Engaged.
No, there's one before. Single,
dating, engaged,
married.
Yep,
yeah. There's 4, and that's a great resource.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, even those reading that we're talking about, books to read, there are books to read for those that aren't even married yet. And again, we love finding those resources for you. So if you need help, send us a message, comment on any of our posts this week. We'll do our best to give you some direction in those areas. So, hey, we're excited, because I'm actually, after I edit this podcast tonight, I'm going to start looking for our 12 books. I'm throwing that in there really fast. 6 each. You guys pick one. And if you, like, really, if you have some suggestions, tell us. Like, we'd love to hear some suggestions from y'all. And if you decide to take on this challenge and you say, hey, we're going to read a book, or I'm going to read a book before Valentine's, tell us what it is.
Yeah, and if you like it.
Yep, and if you like it, and we'll add it to our list as well. So, hey, let's make 2022 the year that we all pick up some healthy habits. We make 2022 the year of healthy habits to grow our marriage. And growing in wisdom.
Let's do that.
And then next week we will come back and we'll move on to the next topic, the next way that Jesus grew. And again, we'll tailor it towards the marriage, so you can find out some good, healthy ways to grow your marriage in 2022. So everybody have a great week. Don't forget, big help if you follow our podcast, rate it, review it. Helps us to get to more listeners, and we would really appreciate that from you. So tell us about your reading. Tell us about your podcast. Tell us what conference you're going to. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time, see you next week.